The original's episode 3, titled Tangled Up in Blue. This episode I really enjoyed because it was such a good, like plan based episode between, Klaus and Rebecca, and just how they had their plans, which seemed like one plan initially, and then of course Klaus kind of went off on his own evil tangent and killed the witch in the end. But I thought it was just really, really good because there were also elements, because of Rebecca's plan, being slightly separate from Klaus's plan, that just added in more stuff for the series, namely Camille becoming sort of attracted to, well, basically, attracted to Klaus, and Klaus attracted to her. But as he said, we all have our roles to play. So he pretty much wiped her memory. So she's kind of back on Team Marcel for now. But after a while, I'm pretty sure she's gonna get to a point where somehow she gets wrapped up in ingesting Vervain, and then things will really get interesting. But excuse me, for now, she's kind of just trapped in the middle as this pawn who constantly just resets its position pretty much, which is kind of cool, but it's also sad just for her character. But at the same time, it's cool because it, kind of keeps the show going with Klaus, using her as the love interest for Marcel, and, Marcel not knowing that in any way, shape, or form. So it keeps Marcel kind of distant from Klaus, and it keeps Klaus, with yet another weapon to use against Marcel as they go through. But my favorite thing about this episode is the fact that, the plan wasn't a simple plan. It was to basically have Marcel, go against someone that he's, super close to, which would be his second in command. And initially I thought that, I'm pretty sure they said this specifically, but, the rule for a vampire killing a vampire is death. But I guess that's more for outside vampires that, come into the town. If they kill, someone in Marcel's group, or any of his vampires, then they become, they're pretty much dead. But if it's someone within his group who he's at least really close to, like he said, they were together for like 70 years or something, it's a bit different. And that's obviously been how, it's obviously how it's been for a long time, because when they show Marcel leave, what he calls the garden, and he tells the guy to seal up, his former friend, I guess, he walks out, and the first thing you see is like there's a hand like sticking out of concrete, and then they're just like heads sticking out of the ground and stuff, because he will have anyone who betrayed him seriously. And it could have, I'm sure it was a lot more than just, someone killed a vampire. It could have been, well, I actually, that might only be it, because if it was anything more than that, I would think it was someone tried to kill him. Or, there could have been a couple of times where there might have been a love interest, and somehow, she was killed by another vampire, but, she might have been human. So, that could have balanced out. So he cast them into the garden too. But I thought that was really interesting, and it was just crazy to see like all these vampires that pretty much just disappointed him, and he just had them, tossed into a pit pretty much, and either buried up to their head, or like pretty much stabbed in the stomach and nailed to concrete, and then sealed behind in darkness, aside from like a little spot for their hand. But I thought that was pretty interesting. And the scene when he first found out, I thought was really well done too, because that was of course when Camille, or Cammy, because that's what she wants to be called, um, when she sees how mad he can get when he kind of just flips like that. And of course she doesn't know that it's, she obviously doesn't know he's a vampire, and that it's, someone, his best friend pretty much just broke his most important rule. But when you see someone and they're just, nice and happy dancing with you and stuff, and then they kind of just flip, and he just like chokes the guy in front of everyone almost, and they kind of have to pull him off, the other vampires do. It was a really interesting scene, and I thought they'd keep that going where, when she says, I guess this is the part where I realize, I know better. I thought that was great, because I thought, they kind of leave it that way, and that's when they would introduce that she somehow got into, having Vervain, so it wouldn't be changed back. But unfortunately, that's really the only bad part I saw, aside from her just being a pawn to, Klaus. I thought that was kind of sad, for me personally, because I thought it would be good if she, kind of distanced herself from Marcel, and he still wanted to be with her, but he couldn't. And then that kind of made him, it kind of threw him off his balance, and that kind of just gave another edge to Klaus while still using Camille, but he wouldn't even have to, manipulate her anymore. Just like, you saw how he is, you just let him go. And then, his sort of attachment to her would also play a role in that. But sadly, that didn't happen, like I said. But I'm sure it will at some point. He's not exactly, he's attached to the baby, but, I can't think of her name right now, but the mother of his child, he's not exactly too attached to her at the moment. And so we'll have to see who he really chooses in the end. And it'll probably be the mother of his child. But, who knows? Because at the end of this episode, we were teased. And obviously, the witches know exactly what it is. Like, she was about to explain it. And then it switched to, you know, I wish I could remember her name now, but it switched to her on the laptop. You're basically looking up what it meant. So the baby is probably a girl, but it's a bit more than just a hybrid, apparently. So however that plays out should be really interesting to see. But for this episode, I thought, the mom, that's what I have to call her now, I felt like, she's a lot like Elena in Vampire Diaries. And it's just like, she's just like the attractive girl trapped in the mansion at this point. Like, she can't really do anything. And it's like Elena when she was human, of course. And it's like, you just kind of have to stay here because otherwise you'll be killed. And that's pretty much how it is for her right now, unfortunately. But they showed in the preview she is gonna actually go out into the world and stuff, so that's good to see. But for this episode, I really noticed it, and I guess that's because we actually got to see more of her in this episode. They had more of a prominent role of her, kind of expressing her emotions and stuff, and meeting the other witch and just talking to her about random stuff. When she saw the wolf, it's really the only connection they've really had in the series so far of her actually being a werewolf. Obviously, she's not changing anymore, and if she is, they just haven't gone past that day, or they've skipped over it and haven't mentioned it, which I think would be weird. So I think she's not actually changing anymore, but like I said, that could have just not happened, or it could just she's not changing because she's pregnant. But either way, they had the little connection of her being a wolf and how she was kind of torn from that life now because of her being pregnant. But it was really good to see her in this episode more, and just watch her kind of learn more about Elijah, which I also thought was really cool because he's obviously still Dagger. But we don't really get to see him talk, but we do hear his voice, and it's basically him just narrating over the journal that he wrote. And I thought that was pretty cool how it tied in, at the end of the episode. And it tied in a little in the beginning too, but it just talks about how, Rebecca basically is sort of losing her sense of worry as far as seeing brutality and things like that. And then they have, the flashbacks from the episodes, previous episodes where she kills vampires, and then stuff about Klaus, and then they show him like just dousing bodies in flames or in gasoline, and then just torching them. So it's kind of funny how history is repeating itself over and over again, where Klaus will say, or Elijah will write this and that, and then he'll say, every time I'm about to give up, I see a glimmer of hope, and it keeps happening, and it's happening right now, in the series, and hopefully this time it will be permanent, because Klaus will have a child, and they will actually be one big happy original family, maybe. But it's cool to get Elijah in the episode at least. Little black and white picture. We saw him daggered still, but that was nothing new. And in the end, Marcel plans on giving him back because Klaus's sort of evil tangent he saved Marcel. But Davina, who apparently the witches do know about, so once Klaus and Rebecca revealed that it was a powerful witch, Sophia, she instantly knew who it was. So whatever their connection is, obviously Marcel didn't exactly steal her, but they know who Davina is. So there's something in there. Somehow Marcel got her, even though the witches knew exactly who she was. Maybe he saved her life or something, but she's obviously really attached to him. It's almost like she's sired to him, which would be really interesting if that came up to be the case. But that almost seems to be how it is. And we got to actually see Davina how she actually locates people using magic, when the witches do it. And, in this episode, when she's basically just drawing a picture of the witch who's doing the magic, and when she feels that Marcel is actually dying, she basically does like a counter spell, and he's almost invincible, but he is almost killed by the witch until, of course, Klaus comes in and saves him. But I thought that was really interesting that she could pretty much just project a spell from wherever she is, which honestly, I think it's their house, because that just seems like it makes a lot of sense. They had a giant mansion, and he could easily put her in the attic, but at the same time, Klaus and Rebecca can't exactly just walk around their house because that would kind of spoil Klaus's plan to take over. So I think it just makes sense that it's in their house, but it could easily be any random attic. But that's just my random guess. Obviously, you can put yours below, but I think he kept them, or he's keeping Davina in their house, like in his actual home base, wherever, he is. And she's just in the attic all the time. And maybe, his own vampires don't even know, if you really think about it. But I'm sure they do, so, who cares? But, seeing her actually, work was actually kind of cool to me. She gets the flashes of the witches. And obviously, she saw the witch that Klaus and Rebecca wanted her to see because she was doing much more powerful magic. And when Marcel decides that Klaus saved his life, so he was going to give Elijah back, we got to actually see a little bit of development from her. It was really more of her kind of devoting herself to Marcel, but it was her own thought process, and she did basically go against him when he said, I'm going to take Elijah and give him back. She says no, and he kind of turns around and does like this look like he's about to, almost like a pimp, like he was finna smack her or something. And then she explains herself. She's like, you said they're dangerous. I'm not gonna give, I'm not gonna give one back. The only one we have until I figure out how to kill him. So I think Marcel might find a way to, he's gonna try to stall or something. He'll say something, she's being this or that, but he'll find a way to stall and keep Klaus, at bay. And he kind of can, because at the same time, Klaus can't just snap on him, because then it would ruin his plan if he just flat out killed Marcel in the front, because none of the other vampires would follow him. They wouldn't be what he wants them to be, which is his family and his, loving, loyal followers. They would just be new enemies that he'd just wipe out, and then he'd be back to square one with like his brother and sister, one of which who kind of hates him, and the other who he keeps stabbing all the time. So I don't know how long, Elijah's going to stay around, but for now, however, Marcel decides to do it, he can do it fairly easily because, like I said, Klaus can't do that much to him. But overall, this episode was really well done. Another little point was Rebecca not letting the witch get killed. It just showed how much she cared for the baby as well. And she also, obviously, she cares more about Elijah, but she knows that if the baby does die, because, she let the witch keep going, Elijah wouldn't forgive her. And that's who she really cares about most. But at the same time, she does still care about the baby. And just like Klaus does, even though, he would show it, a lot less than she ever would. But we do get to see, in the end of this episode, he got the little smile when he found out it was a girl. And, once again, we got to see Rebecca stand up for the baby, because she obviously killed the Nightwalkers in the last episode. But it was a really good episode. We got to see cool elements, witch in love with the vampire and vice versa. Their love basically being the ultimate, plan for Klaus and Rebecca to just swoop in and, get Elijah back and throw Marcel off his game in more than one way, because, Cammy came in and saw that. But once again, her being wiped, she's just reset to her old place. But really good episode. We got to see a lot, and we were once again, teased at the very end. There's something crazy with the baby. Who knows what it could be? It might end up being like a vampire or a werewolf, and it won't be a hybrid, but it'll somehow be insanely powerful on one side or the other. And then at the same time, it could come out being like something brand new. Who knows? And I guess technically it is brand new, because it's the first, born hybrid, so it's still technically new. But whatever it is, and whatever the little tease is, once it's revealed, I'm sure that'll be great. But for now, we only got episode three, and I'm excited for episode four. So comment below, let me know what your favorite part of this episode was. Um, who are you rooting for right now? Because everyone's pretty much bad. Marcel's bad, Klaus is bad, Rebecca's bad. Elijah's really the only good guy. And honestly, I know he'd kind of just leave with the baby if he could. But obviously, he can't do that, especially with him being in a coffin. So, who are you really rooting for in this show so far? Comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.